My name is Jim Johnson, and I was a longtime high school basketball coach that was blessed to be part of a global inspirational story with my basketball team manager that's on the autism spectrum. So I got into speaking. So I'm in my second career. I've been speaking professionally 20 years, to the last 10 years full-time. And my goal is to inspire leaders to help build championship teams. And I do another keynote on helping people make their dreams come true.
Well, real quick, dive a little deeper for anybody listening or watching that isn't familiar specifically with that story. Kind of give us the story to kick things off.
Sure, absolutely. So just to give you a little context, I was a varsity basketball coach for boys for 30 years, and my last 20 years was at a high school in my hometown and called Greece, the largest suburb of Rochester. I went to another high school in the town, so I ended up coaching at two of the rivals. So my last 27 years, I coached basketball at two of the other high schools that I grew up with. And about 10 years in, I got fairly successful from a win-loss standpoint, but I was known as the coach that couldn't win the big one. We would keep having winning seasons, and we would lose in our postseason tournament. But my life changed dramatically. We had a young man come into our program back in 2003-04 season, and he tried out for our JV team. And he's on the autism spectrum. And back then, he was very small in stature, maybe 5'6", 100 pounds. And he tried out for the JVs. He didn't make it, but my JV coach loved this kid's heart. So he said he wanted to give him an opportunity to be the team manager. And because the varsity and JVs usually played back-to-back, I also got to know him. In fact, I tagged his nickname. His name was Jason McElwain, but I butchered his last name so often. I nicknamed him J-Mac, and he liked it, so it was a good thing. And so after that sophomore season, Jason started coming to all our off-season workouts. He really wanted to make the varsity. Didn't make it as a junior, but served as our manager. And a little sidelight, that year was the sixth time I'd taken a team to the semifinals of our postseason tournament, and we lost again at the buzzer to our crosstown rivals. So I was pretty devastated. But Jason inspired me because he came back. He was the first kid I'd ever had try out for our program 3 years in a row and never make it. But his senior year, because he was so loyal, during tryouts, I brought him in and I said, J-Mac, I want to give you a gift. I want you to serve as our team manager, but I'm going to give you a uniform for our final home game where we honor the seniors. And him embrace his parents before the final home game was really cool, in uniform instead of his white shirt and black tie that he used to always wear to the games. Well, I told him I was hoping to get him in the game. And with just over 4 minutes to go, my dream was for him is I wanted to get him in so he could score a basket. So I got him in. The place erupted. And what I didn't know is when he walked on the floor, we had a good student body foul, and they called themselves the Six Men. And what Jason and I didn't know is one of our parents, he was kind of our unofficial photographer, had made all these pictures of Jason's face, put them on paint sticks, and gave them to the student body and said, if Jason gets in the game, show this. Well, I had no idea. So I got so overwhelmed with emotion. I sat down and tears started to flow down my face. I was just really touched. He's now in his first game ever. First time Jason has the ball, he has a three-pointer from the right corner. I could kind of glance, Nate and Clifford, and the whole crowd stands up. Well, he misses the shot by like 6 feet. And I kid people, I know you're not supposed to pray in the public schools, but dear God, I was praying, please help him get one basket. Next possession, he has a much shorter shot from about 10 feet away. He lets it go, and this time it hits the backboard, hits the rim, and you heard a collective groan from the crowd. But I'm thinking to myself, well, God's starting to listen. We're getting closer. Third possession, he has another three-pointer, this time from the right wing. He lets it go. Magic. The place erupts. And I'm thinking, God must be a basketball fan. Not only has Jason scored, he's got a three-pointer. It can't get better than this, right? Well, I'll finish the story in just a moment, but I got to fast forward. Jason's idol, I kid you not, was the late Kobe Bryant. And 6 months after that game, and I'll come back and finish it in just a moment, Jason's at the ESPY Award. He's up for the greatest sports moment of the year. And I kid you not, Clifford and Nate, one of the other finalists for the same award was Kobe Bryant. Kobe had scored 81 points in a game for the Lakers. Jason meets his idol and then beats him out for the ESPY. Well, how does he do that? Well, he didn't just make one three. He came down, he made another three. Then he made another one. Then he made a 2 where his foot was on the line. And the two things I'll never forget was about a minute ago, I get a tap on my shoulder, which I never do during a game. And I look behind me, and it's Jason's mother, and she's just bawling her eyes out. And she whispers in my ear, "Coach, this is the best gift you could ever give my son." I don't know what you guys would have thought, but I got to admit, I cried harder. And then the game ends literally. We were winning by quite a bit. It was almost like a scene out of a movie because the last possession, Spencer Porter, our opponent, I want to give kudos to their coach and players. They were really good sports. They score. And our guy that takes it out of bounds normally threw it to our point guard, but this time he throws it to J-Mac. And J-Mac's dribbling down, and I look up at the scoreboard, and it's ticking down 8-7. I thought he was just going to go in and make a layup. He stops. It's like he's playing for the crowd. He pulls up like 2 feet behind the arc, almost an NBA 3. I'm thinking, Jason, don't shoot from there. You're going to ruin this moment. He launches this rainbow. Swish. I look over, and all I could tell is, oh, my God, I'm living the movie Rudy, because the whole crowd ran on the floor, and our players put him up on their shoulders. At that point, I had no idea how many points he had scored. And our public address announcer comes down and says, the leading scorer for Greece Athena tonight, J-Mac, with 20 points, including 6 3-pointers. So
that's incredible.
Awesome.
I remember that because I graduated in 2003.
Okay.
And I remember that growing up in Pennsylvania. Obviously, it hit our news cycles and stuff. And I just had chills the entire time you were telling that story.
Thank you.
Remember that. So give us an update about where he is now and what's going on there.
So I actually I started speaking on the side, but I coached for 10 more years. And actually, after a couple of years away, Jason actually came back and asked if he could get back involved with the program. And ironically, that season where he had his magical game, we actually won our first championship. So it was crazy. In fact, normally for a championship game in our area, we have an arena. It's decent size, about 10,000. But normally we'll get like 4,000 for a championship game. But because we had gotten so much publicity, it was sold out, and we won the game. But then Jason volunteered. We won 5 more championships together. So he was definitely my good luck charm. I retired in 2016, which was very hard because our program was really good. But I felt I could make even a different type of impact by traveling the country and speaking and doing my different speeches. So I retired. When I retired, he has his own social media station. He works for the school district as a bus monitor. He actually just got his driver's license a couple of years ago. And I'll tell you a couple things. One, in that game, he was 5'9", 115. He's now 6'2", 175. So he does not look like the same kid. In high school, he couldn't bench press 100 pounds, and he now bench presses 250. And I'll give you one little sidelight that is pretty inspirational. Jason was also a runner, but because he was so small in stature, he was an okay runner, but not great. But then when he put on all this height and strength, after about 4 years of being my volunteer assistant, he comes in and he goes, "Coach, I love coaching with you, but I really miss competition. I'm going to get back into running, and I'm going to run the Rochester Marathon." I said, "Really?" I said, "What's your goal?" He says, "I want to qualify for Boston." So I don't know for your listeners, if you guys follow, I'm not, I've never run a marathon, but I did have a running background. So in the qualifying time for his age was 3 hours and 5 minutes. And for those that don't know, that's a pretty fast marathon. And he trains and he runs the Rochester Marathon in 3 hours and 1 minute and 48 seconds. Here's the crazy little sidelight, though. He comes in a week later, he's all pumped up, but he says to me, "Coach, I've got to do it one more time to prove myself before I'm going to go to Boston." Well, here's the crazy thing. I don't know if you guys remember, but Boston had a bombing at one of the marathons. That was the year he could have gone. But for some reason, God above, whatever. So he qualified. He runs the Rochester Marathon again in just like 3 hours and change. So he comes in and he goes, "I'm going to Boston." He's all fired up. And I said, "So Jason, what's your goal for Boston?" He says, "I'm going to break 3 hours." I said, "Jason, Boston's a much more difficult course than Rochester." He goes, "I know, I've upgraded my training." Nate and Clifford, first Boston Marathon, 2 hours, 58 minutes and 46 seconds. So the kid never stops to inspire me. Although I will say he just got his driver's license 2 years ago. And anytime we do something together, I still drive. So that's the only caveat I got to give you.
so, so that's the one line for you.
Yeah.
That is a powerful story, not just in the moment, but what came afterwards, and also the cycle breaking that happened, and you guys harnessing that energy of that moment. That is wild.
Yeah. So thank you.
Wow. Clifford, I'll let you go in first. I got a million questions. I
Yeah.
don't
You
want to
look
hog
all
the time.
stopped
Yeah.
and I love it. But I want to ask you, Coach Jim, going, like, what was that experience like? Because that is a heck of an experience to go from you can't win it to not only can we win it, but we won it this way.
It was truly unbelievable. And I'll give you a few little things. So I'll say, first of all, I wrote a book about it called The Coach in a Miracle. And the crazy thing is that story almost didn't happen because I almost resigned. We had some real adversity the first 6 weeks of the season where the team was really divided. And thank God for my wife and my assistant coaches, because they came to me and said, Coach, because used to give the team a quote every day. And one of my big quotes was, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And they said, now you got to get going. So I embraced it, but it was a real challenge. It took us quite a while until we got the team back somewhat together. And then, of course, what was so prideful for me that night was the kids loved Jason, but I wasn't sure how they were going to respond with him getting on for the first time. And out of their own hearts, and this still touches me deeply when I speak, is that they passed the ball to him every possession. And that was out of their own hearts. It's not something I asked them to do. And that, because I talk about the essence of teamwork. And to me, that was the ideal. Although I still, because I talk to Jason quite a bit, I still kid him and say, Jason, I'm still looking for your first assist. You didn't pass the ball once. But going back to really Clifford to zero on it is that after the game, I was numb. But I felt like I did it for all the right reasons. We didn't have any social or media back then at the game, but I had to call it into our local newspaper after the game. They don't even do that anymore, but back then they did. And I was all excited, and I thought for sure they would give a headline. And we did get a headline the next day. I barely slept, but it said Greece Athena ties for league title, and it barely mentions about Jason's game. But you talk about the village thing. Jason's speech pathology had never come to a game. I didn't know him very well, but he worked with Jason for 4 years. He was at the game. He was so touched. The next day, he called one of our local TV stations and said, you've got to borrow the video from the coach. This is the best thing I've ever seen. They called the school. They came over. They borrowed it as a VHS tape. I know I'm showing my age. And they showed it that night. And then from there, it exploded. Our phones were ringing off the hook. My wife was going crazy, although she did pick up the phone when Oprah's show called. And then, of course, we're trying to prepare. And I'll never forget, because I had somebody say, hey, you got to get somebody to represent you. And I talked to a couple of people, and the one guy goes, well, really, would add to the story if you won the championship. I said, that's what I need, more pressure. But it was just a thrilling ride. It's funny because you talk about the famous. Everybody gets 15 minutes of fame or whatever. I will say our fame lasted a little longer than that. In fact, until that season ended, literally the phones and the calls never stopped until then it did settle down. But it was about a month-long journey as far as just crazy, all the different. Because we never left, so I was on a lot of radio shows and talk shows, but, we weren't leaving town at that point. So.
Yeah, I love that. And I also, you were talking about adversity, the team that it's separated, and bringing that back together and going through my journey, even the podcast itself, the Leaders Arena, it's about going in the arena and learning those lessons.
Yeah.
And one of the most powerful lessons that I've gotten, I'd love your thoughts on this. It goes back to your quote, when the tough gets going, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going.
Right.
And it's like, you don't want it. Like, there's moments where you're like, but I don't want to go. So can you share with me, because you were talking about, it sounded like you had some solid support systems through all of that. Can you share a little more about how you got through that process to get to the light?
Yeah, I won't say it was easy, but, I was at that. I had done a lot of my own personal growth. So I had created a mission statement, and I kind of went back to that. My mission statement is to be an outstanding role model, makes a positive difference in the world by helping others make their dreams come true. So I just went back to my roots. And then you made a great point, Clifford. The one thing is I had a really strong bond. My wife and I will be married 44 years next month. And she's been a great support system for me. And my staff, it's funny because I used to, when we would go to games, sometimes I would see, because usually a JV game and then a varsity game would go back to back. And a lot of times I see staff where they wouldn't even sit on the bench with each other. Like they hated each other. I'm like, we loved each other. We were a family. And so that was very helpful because they all had my back, and that I really appreciated. And it really got me thinking, because I had done a lot of thinking of and I do a team culture talk, and I do a leadership talk, and I talk about these principles of just things that I've learned and studied both from experience. I've read a lot of books. Now I'm a podcast junkie. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'm always curious, what makes a great leader and how do you build team culture? And, so I've got a lot of ideas on that, but those are things I really kind of came back to is it was a daily process. And I'm not going to, kid you guys or your audience that it was easy. There were some days I didn't sleep well. I got in a car accident because my mind was thinking about something else. So it was definitely hard, but, in the end, it was really worthwhile for sure.
I love that.
In the coaching aspect of thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Clifford. Yep.
Just one thing, because I want to share it with the audience. I know it's supposed to be at a bar, but to me, it's bigger than all of us, right? Like leadership, it's such a big thing. And I go, oh my goodness, the simple things make all the difference.
Yeah.
You had a mission and you had it somewhere you could see it and support systems. And I actually didn't even realize how powerful that was when I went through my journey. But I'm going through it and I'm like, how am I getting through this? And I align with God, but in alignment with God is God speaks through people. And when we come together with the right people and we have the right messages to see when it's dark, when it's like, I don't know what to look for. Well, you got to put it somewhere where you can see it because you're going to need it.
Very well said. Very well said.
How do you, I know anybody younger than me today and all of us is not going to, I'm putting myself at that age. I was the same. I graduated in 2003, and I'm trying to remember how the media was at that time. And I'm also trying to remember what it was like to be a 17, 18, 16-year-old boy at that time. How did you as the coach because it wasn't just a regular Wednesday match. You're in the middle running towards so you're not only it's not like, oh, we can just move on and deal with it, right? You got to keep the boys focused and aligned while this testosterone, egotistical scenario and circus is around. How did you do that? Yeah.
Again, I'm going to share some ideas with you, but it was not easy because, our team.
I don't envy you at all, by the way, before you start. I'm just feeling for you.
I know the funny, because as I said, the team was really divided, for a lot of the season. Now we really united around the JMAC game, that really did help us immensely. But there was definitely things because, sometimes I'd have the captains on a radio show with me, and then that would make somebody else mad. It's like, but what I really tried to do is, Clifford said it very well, is you just go back to the basics. Is that I knew, because one of the things I talked about in building culture is you got to talk about, we over me every single day and what's best for the team. And what's best for the team sometimes is not best for you. And that's something that we really talked about, the sacrifice and what it takes. But a great example was Jason. Because Jason now is like this global hero for a while. And yet he had to go back and be our team manager because he had to play in 6 regular season games to be able to play or qualify for the postseason. Yet he embraced that. In fact, it's how I end one of my keynotes, but the Dreams keynote, I talk about, the power of putting other people first to help you make your dreams come true. And what was crazy, Nate and Clifford, is after the season was done, we still got interviewed a lot, and sometimes together. And they would often ask him, "Hey, Jason, what was the best thing about your senior season?" And of course, they were expecting him to talk about his game. And he would throw him a curveball because he'd say, winning the Section 5 championship, there was nothing better than that. And yet, for me, because it really hit me, was when we won that championship. Normally, we have like a local beat writer, but other than that, well, because we had gotten so much publicity, we had like 25 media people there. So after the game, I'm like mobbed by the media, and they're bouncing questions after, but I'll never forget, early on, one of the media said, "Coach, this is your first Section 5 championship. How does it compare to the JMAC game?" And it kind of threw me, and I'm like, you know what? I'm really excited for our team that we won a championship, and I'm very proud of them. But nothing has ever touched my heart and soul like the JMAC game. And that was just the lesson I want to share with people, is when you're, pursuing your own dreams, one of the best ways to help make your dreams come true is to help others make their dreams come true.
Yep.
That is, I can't get past it. I can't get past that whole thing. And I think, so from there, have you had any other, now obviously not some powerful moments, but have you had some other times where you're coaching people who maybe have challenges or distractions from what they're trying to do through there? And how did you any other types of situations you've had like that? I mean, obviously not to the same scale, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, I got to admit, I didn't put anybody else in to score 20 points in 4 minutes, but I will tell you one story. Actually, I had lunch with him yesterday, with him and his girlfriend, and so at the end of my career, we really did really well. We won a number of championships, and we lost in the state finals one year, and we had a really nice run. But I had a young guy that I brought up as a freshman. He was a little bit overweight, but he's a big kid, and but this kid transformed himself, and but he came from a very difficult situation. At that point in his life, he didn't even know who his father was. His mother was very young. She had him when he was like 17 or 18 years old. And I think the young man's name was Anthony. He was more mature than his mother. So it was, it was always a challenge. But I love the kid. He just had this unbelievable desire. And his senior year, he was one of the top players in the state, but he was kind of the in-between size. He was 6'6", but he wasn't really a guard. He was kind of more of a forward. And I knew a couple, like I knew the coach at Michigan, John Beeline, and that. And I reached out to him and said, "John, this kid, I think, can play for you, even though he's undersized." And he disagreed, and so he ends up going to Vermont, and he plays his freshman year, and they make the NCAA tournament, and they play Michigan State. No, it was Purdue. And Purdue had a 7-footer, and Anthony had 22 points and 12 rebounds. Now, they didn't beat Purdue, but I'll never forget that John Beeline sent me a text and said, "Holy mackerel, I made a mistake." Because back then, if to transfer, you had to sit out a year, not like this now. So, but the really cool thing is that Anthony kept working and working. And after he graduated, he got cut. He got an NBA camp, and he played it for a G League team for the Rockets, and he ended up getting called up, and he ended up playing a half a season in the Rockets. And I got a chance to see him in person playing Golden State, which I'm a big Steph Curry fan, and he played the Knicks with the 2 games. And then 2 years later, he got cut for the Rockets. He actually makes the Golden State Warriors, and now he's playing with Steph Curry. And with the little roundabout of the whole thing is, after the JMAC season, we had played, Cleveland's about 4 hours from us. So we had played a couple times before Cavaliers game, before the JMAC game. There was a couple other teams. But one of our parents got to know the Cleveland people pretty well. So they invited to us our final home game. And we got honored at halftime. They gave us all individual jerseys. It was pretty cool. But the crazy thing is, Steve Kerr at that time was a TNT announcer, and he was at the game. And on the JMAC team, we had a player named Steve Kerr. So we had pictures with the two together. And then many years later, Anthony, one of my former players, is now playing for Steve Kerr for the Golden State Warriors. So it's crazy how life happens, So
That's wild. That is seriously wild.
Crazy enough, I have a mentor. He says there are no mistakes. And I will just say the more I go through this game, the more I feel like that's true. And we're creating our reality, whether we know it or not.
right.
That's so cool. I love that.
Coach Jim, I had my high school wrestling coach on the podcast in January, and I while you were talking, I was like, man, I should have also asked Coach this question, but I'm going to ask you. Like, one of the things is, I know Clifford, and I, we talk offline and stuff like that. I feel like we take so many lessons from these podcast episodes as we meet new people, learn their stories. We grab little pieces and kind of begin to reshape our own lives. Is that something you feel like that's happened with you through your career as coaching and now as a leader working with clients and speaking and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I evolved in coaching, because it was interesting, Nate and Clifford, my first half of my coaching career was really all about basketball. Like I wanted to learn more about basketball and the X's and O's and how to teach the game better. But really the epiphany I had was that when I realized, number one, I'm a leader of young men. And it's all about building relationships. And I became much more intentional about building relationships. And I talk, in one of my leadership talks, I talk about 7 keys, but the one I'll focus in on that I think is a good tidbit or nugget for your audience is that when I ask in my audience, how many believe that trust is important to building a great team? And I got to say, no matter where I travel, it's 100%. Everybody agrees that trust is important. But one of the things that helped us, because I kind of got known as a turnaround specialist after my first coaching job, which we lost 18 games in a row, and they let me go after 1 year. So it was a humbling start, but then I started to figure things out. And so when I talk to people, is that what we developed is an intentional trust plan where we had 3 points that we wanted to work on. And I myself, because I mentioned earlier about the fact that I was amazed at how many staffs didn't like each other. We not only cared about you, we built trust to each other, and that 3-point plan helped us. So one of the things I challenge people is that if trust is really important, which I think everybody believes it is, are you intentionally each day trying to build trust with your team members? And I think that's a really good challenge for everybody to think about. And that's something that helped us immensely is we had a 3-point trust plan that we implemented and worked on each day.
Yeah, I never got along with any coaches where it was just about the sport. If it was just about the sport, it didn't click for me at all.
Mm-hmm.
In any sport that I was in. It had to be about the full 360 of life and everything like that.
Right.
So cool.
Have you had like when you're giving this speech, like you have your book and you're giving the keynotes and things like that, are you finding that what's the most, like when somebody comes up to you and tells you their story, you don't have to name the person or anything like that, but what's the story that since that moment, that ripple that has now occurred, now that you're harnessing that and you're giving this keynote, what are some other types of stories that have come to you that have really also taken you back, being like, that's an incredible moment on this earth?
So I'll say the first thing that jumps out to me is when people come up and say, will tell me a story about how they gave someone a chance. And I think that really makes me feel good because too many times we write off people when, if we're really a leader, we're trying to find out what their strengths are, and how we can help them best be successful in whatever happens to be a role, because we're all going to have different roles. And that was the same with my basketball team. Some guys were starters. Some guy might be the best player on the team. Some guy would be the last guy. And, it's interesting. I didn't realize it at the time, but in my life, I went through all those roles and helped me immensely. So when I was in middle school, I was the last guy on the team. So, and then in high school, I became a starter. My senior year, I was the best player on the team. Then my college, I played 1 year of college. I transferred and I got cut from the team. So I really, I didn't realize at the time, but that really helped me with the perspective. Is that's why I really started thinking about, you know what, I've been in all those roles, so I got to be able to help the kids whether they don't make the team or the last guy in the team, because I've been part of that. And so that was something that always, people would come up and they would share a neat story about, how they helped someone do something better than they expected. So that's always a good thing. And then the other thing, because when I do leadership or team culture, because I started with the one speech was called Dreams Really Do Come True. And I did that for 10 years. So I still do it today, but I now added the leadership and team culture. But people want to know, how can I speed up team culture? And I said, unfortunately, I don't think you can. I think you got to have real clarity about, one of the things we talked about with our players, our team mission was to create winners on and off the court. And as the leader, I think you have to be the CRO, the chief reminding officer. So you got to be consistently sharing, what does it mean in our case to be a winner on the court? Winning on the scoreboard is part of it, but being a great teammate is another part of it. Being someone that can handle adversity is another part of it. Off the court, are you the best student you can be? Are you someone that contributes to our community in a positive way? So those are things we were trying to teach through the avenue of coaching basketball. And I think that's the thing I really talk to leaders about, is the mission's got to be bigger than you. And it's got to be, instead of ego, it's got to be we go. It's like, what can I do each day to help this group work together and have clarity. And the last thing I'll say is something I really emphasize is that if you're going to build relationships, you better be intentional about getting one-on-one meetings with people and not having it all about you. It's, certainly we got to go over your results and how you're doing, but are you really digging in and getting to know them? Like, how do they feel about this? Do you know anything about their family? Like one of the things that, a little thing, but my last coaching job, we were one school that was 6 through 12. So we had 5 teams. We had the 7th, 8th, 9th, JV, and varsity. Every single kid in my program got a individual signed birthday card from me. So I would have 7th graders, but I didn't know them very well. They come in the office. Hey, coach, thanks so much for the birthday card. But those things make a difference to people because it shows you care. So.
One word that really popped out, intentional, like being intentional and taking the one-on-one time. Vince Lombardi, I remember there was a story where he would come out with a football and he said, "This, boys, is a football." And it's like going back to those simple pieces and then breaking down the nuances of those pieces, like even the trust exercises that you do. I could only imagine, because it, like, if I could share anything, I go, oh my goodness, as human beings, we go for the result. Like, that's what we want. We want the result. Right. So it's like, oh, I want to win championships. I want to do that. I want to do this. It's like, oh, this is how you get to that. Well, how do I do it faster? Like, are you asking the right question?
Yeah, that's really well said, because, I kid people. I use a lot of acronyms in education. We had those. And one of the other things I encourage leaders is you should be the CQA, the chief question asker, and, be able to dive more deeply with your questions, instead of just having one of the things I heard that I really like is ask the second question, then ask the third question, because that's how you get to know people. It's like, if you just say, how you doing, you usually get it just, I'm doing all right, and then you move on. Well, how you really feeling, and ask that second question and even go deeper. So.
Yeah, so my question to you, Coach Jim, one, I want to really thank you for being here and sharing so much wisdom. What's next for you?
So my big thing is the two things from a business standpoint is that, I still spending a lot of time with my keynotes. I enjoy doing that immensely. I do some workshops as well. And then I have a podcast I started 5 years ago. As I mentioned, my first head coaching job didn't go very well. It's called the Limitless Leadership Lounge. And what my goal was, I have a like you guys are two together, and we have two as well. We used to have three, and then one of our anchors couldn't do it anymore. But I wanted to give back and help young and emerging leaders because people get thrust into leadership positions and they're pretty cool. So, what really an obvious example is the salesperson that's really becomes really good in sales. And then they get promoted to be the sales manager. It's a different skill set. And often instead of the sales manager, they become the sales mangler because they don't know how to manage people or help people. They know how to sell their product, but they don't know how to work with people. And so I think that's something that's really important when you get into leadership. You got to understand how to lead people. And it's Clifford, you brought up a really important, there's a lot of basics to it, but there's a lot to it. And it's a daily basis. And, I listen to John Maxwell a lot, and he says a statement that I think is a lot of truth to it, but leaders don't want to hear it. Leaders never have two great days in a row. And I said, you know what? He's probably right on that one.
I want to ask you I have one last question for you. I want to go back to what you just said about connecting with people and inquiring and probing. I don't use the word probing in a negative way or an aggressive way. I mean it as the probing question part. Elaborate a little bit more for a lesson. I know we're talking about leadership and all these things, but let's drill this down to the most basic fundamental thing. You'll hear me at the end of the episode where I talk about, you could listen to an episode before where I talk about being at the gas station and asking the person next to you, how you doing? And actually listening to them. Elaborate on that process a little bit, because I think sometimes, I say it at the end as a thing to message out to people, but you've lived it. And you've lived that moment with dozens of people in adulthood, as well as childhood and adolescence and teenage years. When you have somebody that might be struggling and they might be closed off, what are some ways to notice there's more to ask, you know what I mean, than it is just what the answer was?
Excellent question. And a couple ideas that I've learned. Number one is make sure that while you're listening, you're both listening with your ears and your eyes. And what I mean by eyes is looking at their body language, because often they will tell you a lot more with their body language than with their words. So I think that's one. Number two is to delve a little deeper. There's a few strategies that I picked up that I started learning. Like one is if they say something and you're not completely clear, is just say something like, tell me more. And then pause, because that's the other thing is you tend to, you got to let the silence go therefore. And you sometimes you can use that a couple times in just getting that going from that. And then making sure that you check for understanding. So after a person has shared some ideas with you, put it back in your own words. Is that right, what I'm hearing? And they'll say, yeah, you're right on, or no, that's not not what I'm saying. And then the other thing is when you're in a disagreement, one of the questions I felt has been very helpful for me is instead of, just, slashing heads, right, is I'll say, well, I don't necessarily see it that way, but why do you feel like that? And just get them to talk more about it, so that you come to some idea from where they come from. I was a big Stephen Covey fan, and one of my all-time favorite books is 7 Habits. And, that one habit, seek first to understand before being understood. Very simplistic, as Clifford talked about the basics, but often we don't do that very well,
I read a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, when I was 19.
Carnegie, yeah.
And I'm reading it and I'm like, this is common sense. Like,
yes.
Yeah, okay, this is pretty simple. And now that I'm 45, I realize, I go, oh, common sense isn't always common practice.
Yes, very well said. Yeah.
I was given that book once, and I was given that book very passive aggressively by a mentor in my life, and it wasn't until many years later, and I didn't that I found out about different neurodivergent diagnosis that I had later in my life. But at that age, nobody knew how to communicate with me effectively, and everybody was so not passive aggressive. That's not the right word. Everybody was so subtle about their lessons that they didn't realize I was so densely not understanding anything. And I carried that book in my backpack for years until I finally read it in adulthood. Yes.
I'm actually curious. So What would have supported you to like actually read that book?
It was honestly like a place of it was a place of desperation, really, where
Mhm.
I do a lot of replaying, and I'll replay back my life in different moments and things like that, and I'll be like, what did I miss, or what did they miss, and not in a blaming way, but trying to figure out the holes.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of, in the beginning of my sobriety a couple of years ago, was a lot of alone time, where like I would be usually going to a bar or going out partying and stuff like that, and then I'm at home and the TV got boring after a couple of weeks. So like then I just start thinking and getting inside my head, which was a good thing and a bad thing, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
at moments. But the replay was it, and I think that was the moment when I realized like, oh, this person did something really different. And I was like, okay, he gave me that book. And then I went back and found the book on the shelf and I started reading the book. And it was different things like that where I had to be accountable for the fact that I missed the cue. And two things missed the cue. One was, a little bit of it was the neurodivergency of not understanding how my brain worked. And the other was also, with that, was masking my whole life with alcohol and pills and things like that. You know what I mean? So it was like they were interconnected and they were the same. And once I was able to separate them, I could start replaying more clearly. And the memories became more clear. And then I realized that the tools were actually literally in my house. I just needed to reactivate why they were in my house.
Very
That's
cool.
so I want to ask a question, and I want to get all three of our answers actually, because what I've noticed, I love performing at a high level. It's so important to me, and performing at a high level with people and with results. Like I think both are very important.
Hmm.
And as I've gone through this journey, there's only been a handful of teachers that really, really hit me to where it's resonated through my entire life's journey. And these teachers, they didn't just hit me, they hit multiple people. And so I go, wait a minute, there's a group who can do things in such a way that it's memorable. And I want to ask all three of us, what makes a leader memorable?
Well, one of the things, because you got a really powerful point, because the more as I've continued to grow in my journey, I started a journey on journaling. And one of the things that I really came up with is I wanted to be more effective as a communicator. One of the best, I listened to his short podcast Monday through Friday, and I've read a few of his books. His name is Robin Sharma, and he's a big leadership guy, but he is so succinct with his communication. And what I've really done is I try to put down, at least sometimes I put down 7 or 8 ideas on my idea journal. Some days it's only one, but I try to capture at least one idea on how somebody said something more effective. And you brought up Clifford, be more memorable. Well, in be more memorable, are you more succinct with your communication? Do you use some powerful quotes that people remember? Do you use alliterations? Do you use rhyming? Do you use acronym? Those are all things like I have a little side thing. I help people become more powerful presenters. And I have an acronym called SPEAK. When we talk about those 5 things, except I changed the K to a C. But the concept is be more memorable. You got to be your thoughts got to be, how can I be more concise and more effective? And also the brain, the memory is better. They could being, putting 2 words that, alliteration, or if they rhyme, those are easier to remember, or simple statements. Like one of the things we talked to our players is these 3 simple statements: play hard, play together, play smart. Pretty simple. But then, of course, that's why I kid people as a chief reminding officer, you better get into what does it mean to play hard, because people have different definitions. And the last thing I'll say is that how many times, because you guys are involved in leadership as well, is we talk about core values, right? And you see a lot of businesses, a lot of sports teams, they have the core values up on the wall, which I think is good. But then when I challenge leaders, I'll say, all right, have you defined what that core value means to your people? Do they know, for one of our core values is respect all people. All right. But then my job is I had to define the behaviors of what respect looked like. And that's the thing that I think there's a breakdown is people may know the core values, but are they living them? So as a leader, are you modeling the core values and are you teaching the core values consistently every day?
Love that.
Coach just nailed mine. It was the second half of what he just said was the way that I connected was exactly that. If you gave me a list of that objectives and didn't elaborate or give me real life examples or ways that I can physically and tangibly or some way connect it, I didn't get it. And it literally, like, also, I'll go back to football. I joke around with my kids all the time. I'd never understood football plays because for whatever reason, like the way, and now today with technology, you can look at things differently and I can get it better. But with just handing me a binder at the beginning of the season and giving me X's and O's, and then like I'm a lineman, so I'm in the middle of it, so I can't really stay above it and see it. Like I just couldn't. I was always going the wrong way to the point where my Matt Coretti, one of my high school wrestling or football coaches, he grabs me by the face mask the one time, not me or anything like that, and he's like, "Stop thinking," and then he just kept yelling, "Stop thinking," and then it was that moment where it finally clicked. But sometimes I literally had to be jarred physically in order to snap out of some cycle of getting, because I would lock in on things and then I wouldn't be able to get out of it. So anytime somebody was able to practically get out of that path for me, that was where it connected. And also on the teaching side, outside of coaching, it was the same. If you gave me a novel in my same coach was my English teacher, and we discuss, we read books or things like that. But if you get too metaphorical in the books or you get too you'll lose me and it's just words on a page. So unfortunately, like those teachers I connected with and coaches had to do a little bit more extra work than just the sport or the course. They had to do a little bit more extra connecting the dots for me to help me kind of get there. And those are the ones I remember rather than the ones that would hand out a worksheet and just turn it in 5 or 10 minutes and at the end of class, or they'd roll in the TV on the roller cart and we'd have a movie day or something like that. I honestly don't remember those teachers. So some kids will remember those as their favorite teachers, but I don't remember any of those teachers.
I only remember the food when I would eat watching the TV.
I was joking around about that the other day as I remember the standardized tests only remember that it was snack time during the middle of the day. So obviously Coach Jim, Clifford and I were your big boys there on your team. So
Definitely. I was just going to share one last thing is that, you talk about building memories. One of the things that I became pretty good at, and I encourage leaders, is used to be the chief storyteller. And one of the things that I learned in trying to teach and make memorable is teach stories both of warnings and examples.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I might bring up, and I'm not going to pick on any NBA player, but, I'll pick on a player and say, this guy averages 25 points a game, yet his team never wins. And we've talked about that. Why does his team not win? He has great stats. And then, next week I'll bring up another guy and go, this guy has pretty good stats too, but his team always wins. Why is that? So, so I think those are the things, because going back to what you were talking about, creating memories, people remember stories. So,
yeah,
I love that. I actually was going to share too, storytelling, also asking powerful questions. And I'll actually share a story too and explain why I shared the story after I shared the story. But it was a TED Talk, and there was a kid on the Golden Gate Bridge, and he was suicidal. He wanted to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. And they ended up calling in, I believe it was Chris Voss. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure it was him. But he ended up talking this kid off of jumping from the Golden Gate Bridge. And the family was just so relieved that their son had survived this, and they invited him in to eat with the family. And the mom comes over and asks, what did you say to him? What did you say to get him to not jump off the Golden Gate Bridge? And he said, it wasn't what I said. I just listened to him.
Wow.
He needed someone to listen to him. And so as I go through this journey, I ask people, do you want better relationships? Do you want more wealth? Do you want better health? Do you want these things? Well, if you want these things, that lesson in and of itself, that's a lesson on relationships. And the most powerful relationship you can have is the one with yourself. Most people don't even know how to hear themselves. So how could they possibly hear others?
Yeah.
And so I go through the journey, just show, not tell. And that's why I show it by sharing a story. The power of the story can literally save a life.
Yeah.
Just listening to other people can literally save their life.
Yeah.
And so as Nate, you go say hi to a stranger. And well, I know that people's minds are saying, why? Why? Well, that's why. We can literally save another human being's life taking the time to say hi and listen to them.
Excellent.
Human connection is a powerful thing. Coach Jim, thank you so much for coming on. Real quick, before we kind of close out, give everybody kind of where they can find you online and everything like that to connect with you.
Yeah, sure. So easiest way is my email. I have a lady that helps me with all my speaking. It's coachjimjohnson.com, or you can just reach out to me if you want to personally, coachjimjohnson@gmail.com. And then I do have a monthly free newsletter, and I have a weekly free blog that you can sign up for. If I can help anybody, that's what I'm here for. So
that's perfect. Cliff, do you have anything else before I close out?
Jim, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on. I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful that Nate started this podcast to meet amazing leaders like yourself. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Coach Jim, I want to thank you as well for coming on. And in addition to everything Clifford just said, there's no script and there's no agenda on this show. And I want to remind the audience that's listening and watching, there's nothing on the screen. We've never met before. Coach Jim and I have never had coffee together. We've never taken a stroll down to the gym or the basketball courts or anything like that. This is human connection. This is meeting strangers. This is in practice everything we just preached for the past hour and told you. We're not people that are just talking. We're living exactly what we're telling you to do in real time. That is something that everybody needs to understand. It is this easy. Every bit of the obstacle to connect with other people that you put into your head is only in your head. It is what is stopping you from doing what it is. And here's how simple it is. When you're walking down the street, put your phone in your pocket and look every stranger in the eye, not scowling, not smiling, not creepy. Just look everybody in the eye. Scan the world around you. Look at what's going on. Look at the retailers that are in there working at their shops. Just put your phone in your pocket while you're walking. When you're at the gas station, filling up that cup of coffee, look to the person next to you and ask them how they're doing. And you shut your mouth and do everything we just told you for the past hour with that person. 5 minutes a week is our challenge on both of our shows. 5 minutes a week. That's 20 minutes a month. We talk about ROI and leadership and business. That one example that Clifford just gave, I guarantee if you do that every week and every time you're at the gas station, you do that, I'm guaranteeing in 12 months, 24 months, at some point, you're going to connect with somebody and you're going to save their life. You're never going to know you did. You're never going to get it. And that's the part. It's not for you. It's for them. So give 20 minutes a month to strangers and keep pushing human connection out there, because this world is a crazy, beautifully destructive place. And that's all we have. And that's what we can live off of. And that's also okay. And that's enough. So please, everybody get out there, be nice to people. Stop being a POS out there. From Coach Jim, he's telling you, be good. All right.
Also, one more thing. It's for you and for them.
Exactly.
I was actually really shocked. The more I serve someone, the more I feel served. It's the coolest feeling ever.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Well, Coach Jim, thank you so much for coming on.
I look forward to staying in touch, you guys. In fact, we will have to connect. I love what you guys are doing. This is good stuff. So
awesome, Coach Jim. Thank you so much, you guys. Clifford and Jim, have a good day.
Have a good day, guys. Take care.
Take care.